Now, the final type of partial fractions questions you might need to deal with is where you have improper fractions. Now, you can see here, if you look at the numerator here, the highest power of x is 2 x squared. So that means the numerator has degree 2, whereas the denominator, the highest power of x is 1. So the denominator has degree 1. Now, if the numerator has the same degree or higher than the denominator as it does in this question, then that means it's an improper fraction. And so the best way to deal with this is to divide the two fractions, divide the numerator by the denominator first. But let's just, before we do this question, let's just have a look at a couple of our previous questions to see, to just check that they were proper fractions. Now, one of our previous questions was this one here, where we've got a degree of 1 for the numerator and a degree of, if you expand those brackets, you'll have an x squared as your highest power of x. So you'll have a degree of 2 in the denominator. So there you can see that because the denominator has a higher degree than the numerator, that means it is a proper fraction. If we look at the other question we did, this time we've got a numerator with a degree of 2, and a denominator. If you expand this denominator out, your highest power of x will be x cubed, so that will have a degree of 3. So again, that will be a proper fraction. But if we go back to the question we're actually doing now, the numerator has a higher degree than the denominator, and so it's an improper fraction, and we've got to deal with it slightly differently to the others. If you realize you've got an improper fraction like we do in this question, it's often the best way to deal with it is to divide the numerator by the denominator. So if we do that, we've got x squared. I like to write plus 0x here, minus 3, and that's all divided by x plus 2. So if we do x squared divided by x, that's going to give us x. Then we multiply x by x plus 2, x squared plus 2x, and subtract. Now we do minus 2x divided by x, and that will give us minus 2. Let's bring the minus 3 down, and we do that. We just do the minus 2 times by this, and so that will give us minus 2x minus 4, and subtract again, and minus 3 minus minus 4 is going to give us plus 1. So what we've realized there is that when you have x squared minus 3 divided by x plus 2, the answer is this numerator here. So the answer is this. So we get x minus 2, and the remainder is plus 1. Now that 1 still hasn't been divided by this yet, so we have this, and that is the answer to this question. We have now split this up into partial fractions, and you can't simplify that anymore. You can't split that up anymore. So that's the answer to that one. Now here's a more difficult question involving an improper fraction. Let's just check it's improper first of all. If you look at the numerator, we've got a degree of 2. Look at the denominator, multiply out that bracket, the highest power would be x squared again, so the degree is 2 of the denominator. So since the degrees are the same, that means it is an improper fraction. Okay, now you can do this by dividing like we did last time, and that would work. It's just that you would then have to, once you've done your long division, you would still end up with this, your remainder being divided by this, which you would then need to split up into partial fractions. So you can do that. However, the way I would do this question is, because it's already shown you in the question how to split the fraction up into a and then b over 2x minus 1, c over 1 plus x. The way I would do it, instead of dividing, I would multiply everything by the denominator. So if you multiply everything by this, you've got 2x squared plus 5x minus 6 equals a 2x minus 1 plus x plus b 2x minus 1 plus x. That's all over 2x minus 1. And then we've got c times by the same thing, 2x minus 1 and 1 plus x, all over 1 plus x. And you can see that that would cancel with that, that would cancel with that. And you can go straight to this step as usual. So you could have gone straight to 2x squared plus 5x minus 6 equals this. Do what you normally do with partial fractions and make the brackets equal 0. You can find out what a, b and c are. So I would put x equals minus 1, and then that will make this bracket equal 0, so that will disappear. Make this bracket equal 0, so that will disappear, and we'll be able to work out what c is. So if you put x equals minus 1, we've got 2 minus 1 squared plus 5 minus 1 minus 6. And then on the right hand side, we've just got c times by 2 times minus 1 minus 1. That's going to give us 2 minus 5 minus 6, which I think is minus 9. And that's going to equal minus 3c. And so c is going to equal plus 3. If we now put x equals plus a half, then this will equal 0, so this will disappear. This will equal 0, so this will disappear, and we'll be able to work out what b is. So the left hand side will be 2 times by a half squared plus 5 times a half minus 6, and the right hand side will just be b and then 1 plus a half. That will give us what's that? A half squared is a quarter, times by 2 is a half, plus 5 over 2 minus 6. So that will give us 6 over 2, which is 3 minus 6. 3 minus 6 is minus 3. And on the right hand side, that's 3 over 2 times b. So if we multiply both sides by 2 and then divide by 3, we'll realize that b equals minus 2. Okay, so far we know that c is 3, we know that b is minus 2. All we need to do now is work out what a is, and it's no use substituting trying to get the brackets equal to 0 anymore, so we need to equate coefficients. So if we equate coefficients of probably x squared, I think it would be the easiest. If we equate coefficients of x squared, you can see that on the left hand side of this equation, the only coefficient of x squared is 2. So the left hand side would be 2. And the right hand side, the only things that are going to give you an x squared, if you were to multiply out all these brackets on the right hand side, the only thing that's going to, this isn't going to give you an x squared. This isn't going to give you an x squared. So the only thing that's going to give you an x squared is when you multiply out these brackets and then multiply by a. That would leave you with a times by 2, in other words 2a, because you would have 2x squared. You'd have 2x squared from multiplying out this brackets, and then you multiply it by a. So that would leave you with 2ax squared. So that means that a, so that means that a would equal 1. A equals 1. And now we've found our 3 values of a, b, and c. And we can just write down our final answer now. So our final answer is 1 minus 2 over 2x minus 1 plus 3 over 1 plus x. We didn't actually have to write this down because the question just said find a, b, and c in this case, but often you do have to write this down, and you would usually have to go on to maybe integrate or differentiate this. So it's always a good idea to write this down. As I said before, you could have done this question by doing long division first. The good thing about doing that is that you would find straight away that that was 1, but you would then have a big fraction which you would then need to split up into these two. Okay, so I prefer to do this question this way, but you might prefer to use long division. It's up to you. As long as you get this as your final answer, that's fine.